All right, welcome to video 2 out of 3 in this series. In the last video, you heard from Nate Nasrallah as he made the case that creating a powerful League of Champions and empowering them with a bulletproof business case so that they can sell the hell out of your product when you're not in the room is what separates reps from consistently closing 6- and 7-figure deals from those who are stuck closing 5-figure deals. Okay, so in this video, we're going to start to get tactical. Now, I already mentioned a little bit about Nate and how he has an average deal size of $1.19 million, as well as his clients that he's taught his methods to. He's closed deals with mega brands like Allstate and American Airlines and American Express and HubSpot and Microsoft and Vonage and Comcast. Okay, he has closed multiple 6- and 7-figure deals in his career consistently over time. And he also built an enterprise sales team from scratch that went on to hit quota 26 quarters in a row. That does not happen. That's insane consistency, especially in enterprise sales. Well, in this video, you are going to learn Nate's 5-step template for creating bulletproof business cases. Okay, so in the next 10 minutes or so, he's going to walk you through step by step what his template looks like for closing 7-figure deals. And he's going to give you both an example. And at the end of the video, if you stick around, I'm going to show you how you can get your own copy of the business case template. So you don't have to make it up from scratch. You can just grab it and start using it. Okay, so this five-step template I'm about to share with you, okay, this is responsible for the average deal size, average contract value of $1.19 million. Okay, so watch carefully, take some notes, and let's hear from Nate.
So let's use an example. This is a company or a business case that I helped create for a product adoption platform. And so what they are trying to do is help PLG companies begin to set up interesting upsell, cross-sell type opportunities to create more value out of just a product-led motion where maybe 1 or 2 users sign up. And so they are helping PLG companies start to find opportunities to go top down and expand account value. Now, my face is over part of this. This is very small font, and that's okay. We're going to go into this step by step using this example. So here we go. First, Lego block number 1. This is the situation. That's the name of it. And what this is you're creating relevance and a sense of urgency by digging into the current state. So the first thing that you want to do here is you want to describe their scenario accurately. Capital markets shrank like cotton sweaters in the dryer during the first half of the year, and your company, this is the target account, is expecting to set up for their largest raise to date, a $100 million Series C, later on this year to enable their one-for-all vision. Now, notice a couple different things here. First thing that you're doing is you are, 1, stating what's going on with some vivid language. Capital markets shrank like cotton sweaters in the dryer. The second thing that you're doing is you're starting to create a hook in the story with some conflicting points. And yet, you're expecting to raise your largest round ever. Notice, by the way, the trigger phrase. If you recall from a couple lessons ago where we were talking about language or matching language, this is signaling and beginning to connect the storyline into other storylines that are already accepted inside of the company. Okay, so there's your first block, the situation. Now, let's go into the second building block. This is your problem statement. And your problem statement needs to be created in a way where you are framing your language to align with your solution, framing the problem with language to align to your solution. You're using the customer data to quantify this, and you are stacking up problems on top of each other in layers. So here's what this looks like. Despite aggressive top funnel investments to grow acquisition, the current run rate looks more like a treadmill. The current revenue run rate looks more like a treadmill. Churn is up. Just 68% of year 1 accounts are renewing, which means not only $5 million lost in Q1, plus that represents an estimated $21 million in expansion pipeline. So notice a couple of things here. First, what we're doing is we're saying, look, it's not working. Something has got to change, despite aggressive top funnel investments. So we're beginning to remove that as a path to get to the revenue goal. and to set up the type of numbers that they need to show in order to pad or create the deck for this fundraise that we just talked about in the situation. Now, again, we're continuing some of this vivid language using this treadmill idea, but we're not just leaving it at an anecdote. We're using specific numbers from the customer in order to back this up. Then notice on this last piece, we are going into a strategic positioning of the problem by layering it. So first layer of the problem, customers aren't renewing. That means there's some lost revenue. However, that's today's problem. Tomorrow's problem, what this really means at a strategic level, is that all of those accounts, those aren't upsell opportunities that you would have relied on in order to expand revenue over the long term and grow into that massive valuation that you just said you were looking for in raising your Series C. So there's number 2, second Lego block, the problem statement. Now, let's go into the third. This is your bridge. What you're beginning to do is forking the route that they are on today into a second or alternative path that is logical and defensible. So you're beginning to set up a bit of a choice that they need to make. Now, the way to do this first is by introducing some type of non-obvious insight. So let's read through this piece of the message here. Companies who avoided down rounds this quarter showed average top line growth, but gross and net retention above their peers, 89%, 107% respectively. Now, the main driver to NRR, or net revenue retention, is 90-day adoption and user activation. Therefore, the customer success team believes, 1, we need to script user paths to accelerate our aha moment. 2, grant free read-only licenses to engage with management inside these companies. 3, trigger some in-app messaging without requiring CS or customer success to manually write these messages, all by Q2. And if we do this, it's going to mean accelerated renewals, expanded contracts. Okay, there's a lot here, so let's break this down piece by piece. Now, first, notice the non-obvious insight that I said that we would lead with. Hey, companies who did awesome in raising their next round, their revenue growth on the top line, like net new, it was actually pretty average, like nothing really remarkable. But here's what they did do that was really remarkable. Oh, that's interesting. Tell me more. Next, what you're beginning to do is create this pathway. You're saying that the main driver, or what is most closely linked, a causal relationship to NRR, is adoption and user activation. What happens very early on in the customer lifecycle, you are planting the seeds for the upsell opportunity long term. Next, we're going into a couple points using the champions language. Again, this isn't just something that you're writing alone. This is something that you're doing together alongside of the champion. Notice some points that they're setting up. All of these things, creating or scripting user paths, license management, in-app messaging, these could all be things that this product, and well, in this case, with the team that I was working with, yes, these are all things that the product enabled. However, we're not going deep into product features and functionality. If anything, what we're going to do is we're going to include a deep dive link to this so that if somebody would like, they can go deeper. And lastly, notice this piece at the bottom. By Q2, it's time bound. So the bridge, the point at which you need to take this pathway, there's a bit of a limit on it. It needs to be done by this time. Okay, so there's your third building block. Let's go into the fourth Lego block here. Scenarios. This is where we are going even deeper into starting to frame the choice or the decision that needs to be made, and we're going to align it with the way executives think. So here's how it reads. Depending on the path that we take, here are 3 possible scenarios for what shows up in our next investor deck. And then we can go into a bunch of different scenarios. There's a lot of different numbers here. 90-day adoption, gross retention, expansion revenue, right? Let's say that these are all of the key metrics that the executives within this account care about most. And now what we're beginning to do is saying, hey, the difference between the base case and the best case. So these are the columns number 3 and the number 4. And we're going to start to break down what exactly drives those. So the core of what you're doing right here is you are creating credibility through some scenario thinking. You are aligning this to the way that folks internally, specifically executives, are thinking. Because the greatest way to diminish your credibility is to present a single number. To say, hey, here's the ROI that is guaranteed. Instead, what you want to do is show that you have put some thought into saying, I know that this isn't a guaranteed one and done. This is what we're going to get. There's a couple different ways that this could turn out. This is exactly the way that executives, particularly CFOs, think. Sensitivities, scenarios, risk analysis, what drives what scenario. By the way, the metrics and the numbers that you use here, notice that we were talking about these earlier within the problem statement section. So let me go a bit deeper on that last point by talking about a question that I often hear is like, should I focus more on ROI or COI, which means cost of inaction? So return on investment, cost of inaction inside of the business case. In other words, is it more important to talk about a problem's cost or the return that we can enable? Now, my view on this, it's actually a false dichotomy, meaning these two things are not mutually exclusive. If I hand you a quarter, let's say, am I handing you heads or am I handing you tails? Neither, right? It's both. I'm handing you both heads and tails at the same time because it's one and the same. It's just two sides of the exact same coin. That's the way I think about ROI and COI here. So the metrics that you use up in the problem statement section, that is the exact same set of numbers that you need to use back here within the scenario thinking. So actually, let me show you this just real quick. So 90-day adoption, gross retention, expansion revenue. Now, if we go all the way back, and I'm going to go up into the problem statement section, what were we talking about? We were talking about the same numbers: retention, revenue, expansion pipeline. Okay, so notice the symmetry here. It's the exact same numbers. It's just flipped upside down. Okay, with that said, let's go on to the next building block, dependencies. Here is where you're beginning to think about change, not just contracts. Most people only think about money, but let's take a look at the language that we'll use here. So in addition to an investment of, I removed the numbers from this particular contract, over 2 years, what we're going to need to do is reallocate 25 hours from product marketing onto this initiative to help us create some of the content. We're going to be spending at least 3 hours per CSM for training before we fully do this rollout. And by the way, we're going to need a work stream leader from all of these different teams: engineering, product, success. What you're doing here is you are going into the choices and trade-offs that people need to make in order to resource a successful rollout of your product. And by understanding this, what you're doing at the same time is you're removing some of the risk, right? If you go back to the last piece scenario, what are some of the differences between, base case, best case, worst case? It could be, in large part, how well resourced the rollout is, because what every executive doesn't want is shelfware. It just sits on the shelf. So don't just think like people would expect you to as a seller. Contract value and numbers go into everything that packages up change or the project, not just the cost of the product. So there you go. In one page, a bulletproof business case. Now let's break it down even further with some of the practices behind this.
Okay, so you just learned Nate's 5-step business case template that closes 7-figure deals. But we're still missing one thing. You can create an amazing business case, but if you don't have a powerful champion, or better yet, league of champions to sell the living hell out of that business case on your behalf when you're not in the room, you still will not close 6- and 7-figure deals with any consistency anyway. So in the next video, we're going to start to close the loop on how all of this stuff works together. You just learned how to create the business case. Now we're going to learn some of the techniques and frameworks and strategies that lead up to the point of creating the business case. In other words, you're going to learn how to create powerful bulldog champions that get things done and that sell the hell out of you and your product when you're not in the room during the most important conversations that get 6- and 7-figure deals closed. So that's what we're going to talk about in the next video. It's going to hit your inbox in the next couple days, so stay tuned for that. Now, if you want Nate's template, I put a button below this video. You can go ahead and click the button. It should open it up and you can create a copy and you can start using it from there. And then finally, as we wrap up, I want to hear from you. What questions do you have about this video and the things you learned in it? What resonated? What questions do you have? And what do you want to see us address in a future video? So reply to the email you got this video from. If you're seeing this on YouTube or social media, reply in the comments or just make a comment. And I'll see you in the next video where we put everything together and start to go really deep on Nate's framework for 7-figure champion building. Stay tuned.